My name is John Rose, and I want to welcome you to John Hacks History. It is the pleasure of my life to make history, international travel, archaeology, and the Bible easy to understand. I studied this in academia. I read all of the old, long books, so you don't have to. And when we get together, it's always my goal to share with you fascinating facts, inspirational stories, and of course, the occasional slight, just very slight, exaggeration. Today, I want to talk to you about Rome. You know, that name and that concept about the Roman Empire. Recently on social media, there was this statistic, and Rolling Stone magazine actually picked up on it, where it said the average American male thinks about the Roman Empire at least once a day. And the funny thing about that statistic was, as people responded to it, everybody said it's true. There's something about the Roman Empire that is fascinating to us. That's why there's so many movies that are made about it, so many TV shows and series, so many art museums that feature remnants from the Roman Empire. It's why the city of Rome is such a popular destination for travel. Year over year, it fights with Paris and a couple other major cities for being the most popular destination for tourism. And today I want to explain to you why the Roman Empire was so important, and also when you're traveling there, how to give your travel experience a little bit more significance. So what is the big deal about Rome and the Roman Empire? Well, really, throughout history, there have been many impactful empires. The Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Greeks, many other cultures. But there was something about the Roman Empire that was bigger, that was greater, that was more out of the box than all of those other empires. Here's one illustration, for instance. The Roman Empire at its height spread over 2 million square miles in the ancient world. That means the Romans were involved in Persia, what is modern day Iran. The Romans were involved in Egypt. The Romans made it as far as England, what is modern day England. The Romans were in Africa. The Romans were in Spain. The Romans spent a lot of time over in Gaul. They were just all over the ancient world, and I hate to use this analogy, but they were kind of like the Yankees. Love them or hate them, they won a lot. They had a military that was exceptional, that just rolled over other cultures and assimilated them. And so the ancient Roman culture was not only vast, but it lasted and was powerful for really over 1,000 years. You can debate on when the Roman culture really began as we know it today. A lot of people will use about 500 years before the birth of Christ. And then they will conclude that about 500 years after the death of Christ. So for 1,000 years, the Roman Empire was the dominant empire on the world stage. They simply conquered everybody. Everybody except for the Scots. If you ever go up to the UK, if you ever go to where it's called Hadrian's Wall that separates England from Scotland, the one people that the Romans could not conquer was the Scottish. So if you are Scottish, I'm not going to do my Scottish imitation, but I'm going to say you have a lot to be proud of because you were one of the few people never conquered by the Romans. So the reason people like to travel to Rome is not only to see that empire and the remnants of that empire, but because they were such good builders. When you go to Rome, you are able to look at the Colosseum because the Roman architects and their industrial mind was so good that they built a 50,000 person capacity amphitheater that still stands today. That's probably the first thought you have when you think about going to Rome, is the Colosseum. And when you explore the Colosseum, you'll see how ingenious ancient Rome was. Do you know that that Colosseum floor could be flooded with water and that they would reenact naval battles? Do you know under the Colosseum they had a system of pulleys where they could bring exotic animals up onto the main floor from a labyrinth beneath? And that even if you look architecturally at how grand and big that Colosseum is, it's awe-inspiring, just like the Roman Empire was. Not far from the Colosseum is the Pantheon, another place when you go to Rome that is a highlight that really captures the power of the Roman Empire. The Pantheon was a temple, pan meaning all, theon, gods. It was a temple to all gods. The Pantheon was the first domed structure in the history of the world. And guess what? The Pantheon is also the longest contiguously opened structure in world history. Same doors, same marble floor, same domed roof in use every day for over 1,800 years. And when you look at that dome, it has no structures, it has no supports under it. It was all done with concrete. They used a combination of lime and volcanic rock, and they mixed it together and structured it, and there's actually a hole in the middle of the dome that lets the light in. And this once again evokes how powerful, how industrial, and how modern and forward-thinking the Romans were. But without a doubt, maybe the whole secret to unlocking the success of the Roman Empire is the Roman road. What they did, they were so ingenious and so smart as they came up with a system of building roads that became a highway system that went throughout the entire ancient world. They could move their armies from Rome up to Germany, their armies from Rome over to Africa, over to Spain, over to Gaul or modern-day France, over to Persia, over to modern-day Israel. They developed this highway system of roads, once again covering a 2 million square mile empire. And these roads are kind of equivalent to modern pavers that are kind of popular now in the suburbs of the United States. But these roads had sand under them, they had a drainage system, and here's the cool thing. You go to Rome today, you walk on that same Roman road. You go to France today, the southern part of France is littered with the Roman roads that still are part of the old cities of southern France. That's the same in London, England. That's the same in Libya, in Africa. That's the same in Spain. The Romans were such great engineers that they were able to build things that lasted, and that's why we can be fascinated with them. My dear father, who loved the Bible and loved studying about the Romans, I remember when I was young, he told me this story, and he said, you know, John, if the Romans could ever come to our modern world, they wouldn't be interested in movie theaters, or they wouldn't be interested in the Grand Canyon. What they would want to do is go out and look at our bridges and go out and look at our roads and anything, and our freeways and anything that we built made out of concrete. Because those things that have been built and made out of concrete were how the Roman Empire became such a long-lasting and impactful empire. And that's why it's so fun to travel to Rome today, is the stuff has withstood time. Now, really, the most famous name throughout the Roman Empire would be Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar is in the story that will develop in a while. He's kind of like the Darth Vader of the empire. As he's a young teenager, he has a very cool hairstyle, a very mod hairstyle. And historians will even note that people reacted to how he wore his toga in a particular way, and that he had a sash around his toga. Isn't it fascinating that even in the ancient world, we know enough about the Romans to know that their teenagers had a particular fashionable style. And as Julius Caesar grows up into a man, he is very ambitious. He not only becomes a politician, but he also becomes a general, and he becomes like the baller historical general of all time. He conquers Africa. He spends a lot of time over in what they call Gaul, we would call France. He conquers Spain. He goes over and he fights the Greeks. He's all over the place. And he is a very successful general. But the cool thing about Caesar is he's also very, very stylish. He's also very, very swashbuckling. And he likes to talk a little bit of smack. Boy, I can respect that. Because one of his famous things that he says when he's writing letters home to the Roman people telling him what a baller he is he comes up with this little saying, Vini, Vidi, Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. Now, there's one other thing about Julius Caesar and the Roman Empire that really makes them so important and so noteworthy to those of us that live in the 21st century. And that is that the Roman Empire, and really the world that Julius Caesar built, will serve as a backdrop for the arrival of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was born into a world that Julius Caesar built. Jesus Christ was born into a land that was being occupied by the Romans. And in fact, in Luke chapter 2, we are told that there was a Roman census that was demanded, which is why Joseph and Mary had to travel to Bethlehem. So even the place of Jesus's birth was dictated by the Romans. And in fact, it is Julius Caesar's great nephew, I believe was his relationship, Octavian, who will be the new Caesar, the Caesar Augustus, who will be ruling when Jesus Christ is born. So Jesus really enters into the world, into a Roman world, and really history, the Bible story, the New Testament, is the story of the Christians, the no army, no power, no money, no might, the Christians really at odds with the Roman Empire, and who will win. And by the way, this is a story that God has written on our heart, because the story of the early Christians against the great evil empire of Rome, it resonates just like Star Wars and a ragtag group of rebels going up against Darth Vader and the evil empire, or Lord of the Rings, or Harry Potter, or every grand story that's ever been told has in it that same concept of what the New Testament has in it, which is the people of grace, the people of love, lacking in money, lacking in political power, lacking in clout, having no army, fighting a war of peace and love and humility against the vast, powerful, muscular Roman Empire. So in this clash of empires, in this war between the followers of this itinerant Jewish rabbi who just happened to be the Son of God, Jesus Christ, who had a message and an ethos of humility and forgiveness and serving others, against this vast Roman Empire. When we travel to Rome, we're able to tangibly see the results of that clash of empires. And the results are simply this. The early Christians used, in one of the great ironies of world history, they used those ancient Roman roads that spread all over the world. What the Roman Empire used to conquer and humiliate people, the early Christians used that system of highways to spread the gospel message of Jesus Christ. Isn't that ironic? The Roman road was like the internet of the ancient world, and the early Christian church was able to go all over the ancient world and share the good news of Jesus Christ using that Roman technology against the evil Roman Empire built on barbarism and military strength, and to win over the ancient world with a message of the simple, humble teachings of the fact that Jesus Christ was born of a virgin, lived a sinless life, died a sacrificial death, and was bodily resurrected. There's a second very impactful reason why Christianity overcame the Roman Empire. And it has to do with a plague that happened around 180 AD, the Antonian plague. Now, the ancient world was a brutal place, but it was also a very compact place. People lived close together. And this plague, which they think might have been smallpox, struck the Roman Empire and devastated it. And what made it even more impactful and contagious was people lived in these dense cities. One of the biggest mistakes we make when we think about the Roman era, especially as it relates to Christians, is that they were all farmers out living in a rural area. You might be confusing them with Quakers. But the Christian message thrived in highly urban areas like Rome, like Corinth, like Jerusalem. The city of Antioch, which we hear a lot about in the New Testament. You know, somebody went back and recently did a survey and an estimation. Antioch was a walled city. People had to live within the walls because there was so much barbarism. They estimate that the density of a city like Antioch was actually higher per square foot, more people living within square feet than modern day Manhattan, New York. That's how dense the population was. So anyway, this plague hits, and because it's a hedonistic society where everybody is looking out for themselves, all of the prosperous people, basically everybody flees from these urban areas, but there's one group of people who help those that are sick. There's one group of people who actually love and care for and are willing to touch those that are considered the untouchable and those that have the plague. And those are the Christians. And so when they go back in history and they look at how Christianity overcame the Roman Empire, it was Roman roads, but also that impactful moment when Christians literally loved their way into conquering the Roman Empire. And by the way, doesn't it go today worth noting that political power through raw ambition never works for the Christian church. What works is the humble love of Jesus Christ applied to our neighbors, and a kingdom is overcome. That might be appropriate for a few situations we currently find ourselves in. So now let's talk about traveling to Rome today. I hope you have an opportunity to fly to Italy and to arrive in Rome and to go to the Colosseum. And as you walk around that amazing place, a spectacular place, I hope you'll look across the Colosseum floor, as I like to do, and notice in the far corner is a cross. And as you look at that cross, you will be reminded of the fact that in the war of empires, brute strength didn't win. Political oppression and charisma didn't win. But the humble teachings of Jesus Christ, who was God, and his followers conquered the Roman Empire. And as you walk out of the Colosseum, past that cross, you'll go through the Forum. They'll have a little spot where you could see where Caesar, after he was murdered by some senators, where they laid his body. And then you'll pass by a place called Mamertine Prison. And in Mamertine Prison, the Apostle Paul, who opposed Nero and was ultimately martyred by Nero, The Apostle Paul wrote the letter of 2 Timothy, and you can go inside into that dungeon, into that specific place where with almost certainty we know the Apostle Paul spent his last days on earth, and realize the fact that over the past 2,000 years, so many people have read the words of Paul, which the Holy Spirit gave him, have recited the words written in that very jail cell. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. That the Apostle Paul has connected people to the eternal loving God in a way that Caesar, Julius Caesar, and all of his other emperors simply were never capable of doing, because God's kingdom and God's empire was built to last. If you continue to walk along those beautiful Roman roads throughout the city of Rome, I hope you walk over in the neighborhood of the Pantheon. As you're walking over towards it, there's a lot of good pizza places, and you can grab some chilled red wine, which on a hot summer day is a lot of fun. And as you walk through the doors of the Pantheon, those bronze 16-foot original doors and the marble floor, and you look up into that circle and you see that dome that has lasted 2,000 years, I want you again to look at the far side of the Pantheon and realize they're not worshiping Zeus anymore. They're not worshiping Jupiter, and they're not worshiping the emperors anymore, because the Pantheon has been used as a church for nearly 1,700 years, and they sing songs in that old temple, but the songs that they sing today, the choirs sing to Jesus Christ. Then you might need an Uber, or you might need to make a very long walk to go across the river and to go to a place called the Vatican. Now, the Vatican is known the whole world around. It's where the Pope lives. It's the largest religious site of the world. But here's the irony of history. The original Vatican was a circus that Nero, who oppressed the Christians, had. It was a place of entertainment. It's kind of like a racetrack. And in the middle of Nero's circus, there was an Egyptian obelisk, big, tall, pointy statuary. And history tells us that Nero had Peter martyred there. And Peter, in respect to his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, insisted that he be crucified upside down. And certainly they thought when they killed Peter and they killed Paul that it was the Roman Empire that would be victorious. But now, on the very spot where Peter was martyred is the center of Vatican City, the center of the Christian world for nearly 2,000 years. And people come from all over the world to sing and to worship and to thank the living God for Jesus Christ, not for Julius Caesar, not for the Roman Empire, but an empire of love, an empire of grace, an empire of mercy, and a kingdom that will last forever. And so when you come to Rome, armed with this history and with these facts, you will walk through a living exhibit of the remainders of a war of empires, and you will be certain that Jesus won.